Hello and welcome to Precontation Points Video Snark. I read books and talk about what went wrong. I'm continuing my read-through of Alienated by Melissa Landers. Not the first video, go check out the others. Links are posted below. Chapter 25. The ship is headed towards the other planet, obviously intent on taking Kara with them, despite not one single person wanting her to go. However, Kara is suffering from the light speed sickness and can't stop vomiting. We get an entire page of this, which is super duper fun. Not. Eventually, the ship's medic comes in to check on her and gives her something. As she's doing this, she tells Kara that Elix is also sick, but not from lightspeed sickness, if you catch my drift. But she goes on and says that there's nothing actually wrong with Kara, but her body thinks that something is because of the speed that they're traveling. But as the medic explains about how the mind can need some time to adjust, it quickly turns into a metaphor about society accepting changes. Well, she said, regaining use of her arm, if the hearers are so evolved, they should be able to figure it out. We can, she nodded for Kara to drink, but it takes time and patience. The problem is, as Elix said in an earlier chapter, that they're so advanced that they're somehow progressing backwards. Their technology might be more advanced, but their psychology evolved at the same speed as humans did. Kara wonders why this random person cares so much about her and her relationship with Elix. She asks for the girl's name and she tells her Elixa, but prompts Kara to call her Ellie. Kara guesses simply because the names sound so similar that Elix and Ellie are related. Ellie agrees and says that she's Elix's biological sister, but thanks to the messed up relationship system on their planet, the two of them simply view each other as close friends instead. Kara feels betrayed that Elix would have kept this from her, apparently having forgotten that the other species doesn't view family relations the same way humans do, which is easy to forget that your brother-sister when not only did you not grow up together, but they were also born from test tubes. Ellie continues on and tells Kara that Elix feels more deeply than anybody else, which she thinks is the actual reason why the Way chose him and not because of his translation skills. She says that Iran was the best of the best, but then almost tearfully says that she and Iran used to be in an insanely close relationship. This leads to her explaining that the Way was telling people that they had to get busy the old-fashioned way, and they were even allowing them to choose their own partners. She says that the closest translation she has for her relationship was being engaged. She then tells Kara that she'd expect to be for the Way with Elix and Cyrene, and that Kara will have a few moments with her brother before she has to appear before the Way. Kara cleans herself up and manages to eat something for the first time in a few days. Troy shows up in her room and she eagerly hugs him, but as she looks at her brother, she knows that his time and space seems to have changed him, and not for the better. Troy seems to know a little bit about what's going on, and Kara remarks that she has to convince these people to give her the technology that can save Earth. She also asks if they had any luck locating the terrorists who murdered Iran, but he says that terrorists are on a whole other level and don't give each other up. Somebody comes to get Kara and takes her before the Way. Elix is already there, and as she goes to sit next to him, she examines him for obvious signs of him having been whipped, but it seems as though these people might enjoy torturing their citizens but not leaving marks, because although Elix shows signs of immense psychological distress, his body appears physically unharmed. Elix tells her that she cannot interrupt whenever somebody is speaking, that it is a sign of grave disrespect. However, despite the grim circumstances, Kara is like, "Oh, I know how to debate. I got this." Chapter 26. The leaders come in, and yes, they are absurdly old, although Elix knows that there are two new clones on the council that he's never seen before. Kara walks up to them and silently greets all of them in turn. Nobody says anything, and they do this for the entire council. Elix thinks that what Kara is doing is more like giving somebody a rather intimate embrace rather than to shake their hand, but again, not one single person stops her. After Kara sits down, one of them asks Elix via mind speech if Elix has brought Kara there as his alien betrothed, the same kind of word that Ellie had used to describe her relationship with Iran in the previous chapter. Elix says no, that Kara wants to go back to Earth. Kara protests that everything needs to be said out loud and in English for her benefit. One of the two new and younger ones, Jackson, apologizes for this. Cyrene speaks first, and it's been well established throughout the rest of the novel how awful of a time that she's been having. It would appear as though her problems didn't stop at her host being a creep, but extended to his male peers as well. That she also had death threats and requested military presence in the end. She ends her turn by reminding everybody that those monsters killed Iran and that humanity is beyond salvation. When Kara gets the speaking baton back, she starts off by assuming not a defensive stance behind the podium, but more of a casual stance instead. She tells them about some of the better things that humans have to offer, such as people who would help lift others up even when they themselves are down. She continues on and says that the majority of people were in favor of the alliance, enough to the point where the get rid of the aliens bill was rejected, and reminds them that both parties still need the alliance. Jackson tells Elix via mind speech that he likes Kara's moxie, but that it's too bad that she can't stay. The entire thing makes Elix sick. Kara gives him the baton and he explains about why he went behind the backs of the white to plant that crop-destroying plant. But when he and Aaron realized how much was at stake here, not only for the species but for the two of them, it was already too late. Aaron intentionally slipped the military guard, which is why he ended up being captured and killed. He begs that the fault was his own and not anything to do with the humans, that he'd rather be further punished than to see an entire planet's worth of people being punished instead. He literally asks to be killed so that the Alliance on Earth can be saved. He has to mentally shoot a message to Kara not to speak. She begins to cry so much that she accidentally sends all of her emotions to him. He has to sever the bond between them so that he can focus. The way leaves to discuss this and Kara runs over to Elix. She tells him that if the council comes back and says that he must die, then the two of them will steal a shuttle and leave. He doesn't have the heart to tell her that the shuttle wouldn't take them far at all. They start to make out, and I'd like to remind everybody that Cyrene is still there. Jackson comes in and Kara demands to know what the verdict is. In an effort to draw this out, Jackson jokingly makes a reference to the entire "Which news do you want to hear first, good or bad, things that humans like to do." Chapter 27. Carabics for the good news first, so Jackson says that the alliance negotiations will continue. The bad news is that both Elix and Cyrene are going to be punished, but the good news is that they aren't going to be put to death. Their punishment is that they have to go back to Earth to clean up their mess. But Kara is going to live here with the other two human exchange students. Kara naturally protests this since she, 1, wants to graduate, 2, wants to help, and most importantly, 3, simply wants to be with Elix. Jackson says that Kara leaving now will be a sign of good faith. Kara understands that she is an insurance policy to make sure that Elix and Cyrene are unharmed. Although I think that the aliens really underestimate how badly that humans would simply kill all that they don't like. Do you think that those terrorists give a hoot about Kara's safety and Lahir? Because they don't. Jackson leaves into it. Kara runs into Elix's arms again and the two of them start making out again, but Troy reminds them that he is also still in the room and pointedly tells Elix to stop touching his sister. Kara throws back at him about how he keeps leaving, which shuts him up. Kara then realizes that she has one of the alien communication devices. Troy explains that while cleaning out Elix's room, they found his communication device and reset it for them to use, so now Eileen and Bill are able to talk to their daughter. They explain to her parents what's going on, about how Elix is coming back and Kara will be going on to Lahir. Eileen says that Tori had called the other day to say that Eric was okay and to verify that Kara had actually left. Eileen promises her daughter that they'll have to try and smuggle Tori over so that the two girls can have a conversation, but it'll be rough because Tori is still in deep with the terrorist group as a double agent. They end the conversation and Troy leaves to give Kara and Elix a moment to say goodbye. They go back to her room where Elix points at a dying nebula out the window, but how? If they're traveling at light speed, how can they even see anything more than a blur out the window? I am confused. Anyway, Elix says that there's another dying nebula visible from the Lahir sky. He tells her to look up at it and look forward to the future where they can look up at the same sky together. Kara has to remind herself that this separation is going to go by quickly, and when they spend the rest of their lives together, it'll seem like nothing more than a blip on the radar. On that note, the book comes to a close, which means that it's time for my final thoughts. Overall, I thought that it was decent enough. I mean, have I read worse books? Yes, but it's also not this amazing book that I'm going to scream that everybody in the world needs to read this immediately. And it's not that I'm saying that books can never have political undertones in them, but I feel like the author was more than a little heavy-handed with all of it, that there was a lot going on. Like, pick one theme, guys. 1, put the rest back. Granted, the ecology guilting did come into play, and it's not that I'm going to say that it's not plot relevant, but at the same time, the book was already bogged down with the racism subplot. Why could the author not have simply written, "Hey, we're aliens, we need help being less terrible at breeding. Anyway, here's some awesome technology so that you're not giving up your cells for nothing." There's nothing wrong with that, but no, we have to have the eco-terrorism in there too. And it's not so much that I hated the Kara-Elix relationship, as more of when it was first introduced, and I feel like it kind of came out of left field. Mainly because we didn't get confirmation over Kara's feelings for the longest time, and it was only Elix, except that the narration never made any sort of attempt to actually show Elix falling in love with Kara so much as pointedly telling us that he apparently woke up one day and was like, "I think that I'm in love with my host," which, hope I don't have to tell you why the telling instead of showing thing is a really bad idea in a romance novel. Can you imagine how that would go if this was straight up romance? I get that part of Elix's character is that he doesn't understand how to express literally any emotion, but like, if he can decide that he's in love with Cora, I think that the narration can take some time to establish what he's feeling to the readers. And yeah, those 2 points are pretty much my biggest complaints about the series. That this story had too much going on in the background and that Alex's character was poorly written. Maybe some people would complain about why Kara was chosen as one of the human faces of the exchange, but like, I don't know, man, kids are the wave of the future. I see this with Gen Z going out there and causing so much havoc. I can see how a teen would whip people into a frenzy enough to convince them of so much, which is exactly what we saw Kara doing. And now the moment that you've been waiting for, the announcement of what I'm going to be reading next. The Betrayed by Kira Cass. And I know, you all have some questions, but I promise that I'll answer them when I start the video next Monday. Thanks for listening to my book Snark on YouTube. New videos are up every Monday, but stick around because I sometimes drop random videos on other days too. Just as a reminder, even if you can't financially support me, there are other ways to help me out. The first is watching this video as well as all my other videos. It's also important to like and subscribe. Finally, you can share this video with all of your friends so that they can help as well. If you're already caught up with all of my videos, you can go to Tumblr for my main book Snarks, always free and updated every morning. And if you've already read all of my main Snarks, then you can find even more Snark on my Patreon. You can access it for $1 a month. Members also get early access to my main Tumblr Snark. Special thanks to Dawn, Phoebe, and Nikki for supporting me on Patreon already. If you want to hear your name in my video next week, either support me on Patreon or make a one-time donation. Do you like my Snarks so much that you want me to snark your writing? I do that too. For just $6 per chapter, I will tell you how awful that your writing is. But not to worry if you feel like you couldn't take the criticism. I also offer regular book editing as well, just 1 cent per word. You can contact me on any of my social media platforms if you have further questions. If you want to read some of the things that I've written, you can purchase my works on Amazon. I have a slew of erotic short stories and now 2 full-length novels. I also sometimes run flash sales on my stories, and if you don't follow me on any social media, you might want to do so just so you can know when I might be offering more things for free. Links for everything will be posted below. See you next week, guys!